There is a specific tightness that happens in your chest the moment someone says those 4 words. I'm coming over. You smile. You say yes, of course, come by. And simultaneously, somewhere underneath all of that, something quieter says, there goes my peace. If you know that feeling, not the guilt that follows it, not the explanation you fumble through afterward, but the feeling itself, you are not alone. And you are not cold, or rude, or secretly a bad friend. There is a genuine psychological reason this happens to some people and not others. And once you understand it, the feeling stops being something to apologize for. For some people, hosting is genuinely enjoyable. The energy, the laughter, the full house, all of it registers as warmth and reward. But for others, home is something different, something harder to describe, and much easier to feel. Home is the only place where the mask comes off, where the breathing finally gets deeper, where the world, for a few hours, stops requiring something from you, your attention, your performance, your managed version of yourself. It is the single environment where you are not on. And that distinction between being on and being off is more significant than most people realize. The moment someone enters that space, even someone you genuinely love, something shifts, the air changes, the silence breaks. A subtle, quiet tension arrives, not because you dislike the guest, but because your sanctuary has been entered. The reset button has been pressed by someone else's hand, and your nervous system, which was finally beginning to exhale, draws back in. Psychologists who study environmental psychology use the term territorial comfort to describe what's happening here. Your home is not just a building, it is your emotional regulation system. Every object in its place, every familiar sound, every routine you move through without thinking, all of it is something your nervous system has learned to read as safe, as yours, as controllable in a world that largely isn't. When a guest arrives, none of that disappears. But it changes. Think of it like a completely still pond. Someone drops a pebble in, nothing catastrophic happens. The pond is still there, still recognizable, but the ripples move through everything. The stillness is gone. And for a mind that came home specifically for that stillness, the ripples are not nothing. They are the thing that was taken. Research on sensory processing sensitivity, a trait found in roughly 1 in 5 people, shows that highly sensitive individuals process environmental changes more deeply than others. Not more dramatically, more deeply. A shift in the atmosphere of a room, a change in the soundscape of a home, the presence of another person's energy in a space that was previously empty. These register at a level that people without this trait genuinely don't experience. Which is why telling someone with high sensory sensitivity that it's just a visitor misses the point entirely. To their nervous system, it is not just anything, but there is another layer underneath the environmental one. And this one is more personal. Out in the world, most people who feel this way are functioning at a certain level of social performance. They are polite. They are aware of how they're landing. They manage their expressions, their tone, their energy, not dishonestly, but deliberately. They are on. And that sustained performance, even when it's comfortable, and even when they enjoy it, has a cost. It draws from a reservoir that needs to be refilled somewhere. Home is where the refilling happens. It is the one place where the performance ends, where they can exist without anyone watching, without any impression being managed, without the low, constant effort of being social. The mask doesn't come off dramatically. It just quietly, finally, doesn't have to go back on. Until a guest arrives. And it does. Psychologists describe this experience as ego depletion, the measurable depletion of mental and emotional energy that follows sustained self-regulation. When someone who has been performing all day finally arrives home, and then immediately has to resume performing, the drain isn't imagined. It's neurological. Like a phone that finally got plugged in, and then got unplugged 30 seconds later, the battery percentage has not recovered. It is just losing ground again. If this is describing something you've carried for years without quite having language for, take a moment to like this video. It helps more people find this conversation. And if exploring the real psychology behind everyday human behavior is what you're here for, subscribe. This is the work we do here, consistently. Here is the part that surprises people most. The individuals who feel this most acutely are very often the warmest, most generous, most deeply caring people in any room. They are the ones who remember the specific thing you mentioned 3 weeks ago and ask about it. The ones who show up completely when you need someone. The ones who give, genuinely and fully, in every interaction they're part of. And they are the ones who feel the most profound relief the moment the door closes and the house goes quiet again. Not because they didn't care about the person who just left. Because silence, for them, is not emptiness. Silence is oxygen. It is the thing their system runs on, and the longer they go without it, the more everything else costs. Psychologists describe this as having strong emotional boundaries, not walls, not distance, not a failure of warmth, but a clear, internal understanding of which environments allow them to be whole. They are not pushing people away. They are protecting the conditions under which they can fully be themselves. And without those conditions, what they offer other people is diminished not because they care less, but because they have less to give from. This is also why many of them develop a strong preference for neutral spaces, cafes, parks, restaurants, anywhere that belongs to neither person specifically. In those places, they can be fully present, fully engaged, fully generous, because their inner world, their private space, their emotional home, has not been entered. They are visiting somewhere together. Nobody is the host. Nobody's sanctuary is at stake. For some people, though, this goes deeper than preference. It has roots. If you grew up in a home where guests meant unpredictability, where visitors brought tension or chaos, or a version of your parents, you didn't recognize your nervous system learned something specific. It learned that the arrival of other people into your home space changed the emotional weather in ways you couldn't control and couldn't always prepare for. You learned to track that, to brace for it, to hold a certain readiness whenever someone new walked through the door. And that learning doesn't simply stop when you become an adult and the circumstances change. The nervous system remembers what home felt like when it wasn't safe. And even when your home is entirely safe now, even when the guests are people you chose, people who love you, people who would never bring chaos, something old still activates. Attention you didn't ask for. An alertness that belongs to a version of you that doesn't exist anymore, but still gets consulted. Understanding that doesn't mean you're damaged. It means your past was real and your nervous system did its job. Here is what all of this adds up to. Home is not a stage. It is not a place of performance or production or social obligation. For the people who feel this most clearly, home is who they are when no one is watching. It is the truest version of themselves they have access to. And protecting that, keeping that space genuinely theirs is not selfishness. It is not a social failure. It is not something that needs to be fixed or explained away. You can love people deeply and still need solitude. You can be extraordinarily warm and still require a room where the warmth can rest. You can be someone's most loyal, most present, most generous friend, and also need the door to close at the end of it, and the quiet to come back in. Those two things are not in contradiction. They are exactly how some people stay whole enough to keep giving. The quiet room, the familiar chair, the cup of tea, the gentle return of your own thoughts, unhurried and unperformed. That is not isolation, that is restoration. And some people cannot do without it. There is nothing wrong with being one of those people. When someone says they're coming over, what's the first thing you actually feel before the polite response kicks in? Have you ever been able to explain that feeling to someone who doesn't share it? Leave it in the comments. You might be surprised how many people reading your words right now have been quietly carrying the same thing.